Sabrina's coming.
This meeting is called to order. We have a public hearing tonight. The purpose of the public hearing is to provide an opportunity for interested parties and citizens to be heard regarding the proposed resolution related to the exemption of school taxes for qualifying persons age 65 and over with limited income, as provided by the Real Property Tax Law 467. Additionally, the public hearing is to provide an opportunity for interested parties and citizens to be heard regarding the proposed resolution related to the exemption of school taxes for the qualifying persons with limited income and disabilities, as provided by the Real Property Tax Law 459C. So I'm just going to turn it over to our business official, Michelle. If you could just explain the function of both of those changes, and then we'll open it up for discussion from the board.
Certainly. So the definition of income has been revised as it relates to these property tax exemptions. So we've been notified by our local assessors, and for Sachem, that's Islip, Brookhaven, and Smithtown, that the districts can either choose one of the three new definitions of income that relate to these property tax exemptions, or the districts can choose to do nothing. So the three options that are available, the first one relates to Social Security benefits. And if districts were to adopt option one related to Social Security benefits, only the federally taxable portion of Social Security benefits would be considered income. So that is a change that would actually increase the number of individuals, our seniors and our individuals with disabilities that would be eligible for it, because it would actually exclude some of the Social Security benefits from that income calculation. Option number two is to include IRA and annuity distributions as income. Currently, they're not included as income, but pensions are considered income as it falls into this category. So the towns have been suggesting that districts move in this direction because it would consider all retirement income the same, whether it's your IRA, your annuity, or your pension. This would actually decrease the pool of individuals that would qualify for this partial exemption, because you would have more income factoring into the calculation. And the third option would be to allow income to be offset by unreimbursed medical expenses. And that one would be a little more difficult to manage. You would be relying on individuals with bringing in their receipts, and how do you know what was reimbursed, what wasn't reimbursed, what to include. There are HIPAA regulations that fall into that. But that one would also increase the pool of residents that, individuals that would qualify, because it would offset their income. And then the fourth option would be to do nothing and just leave it the way it is today. So those are the different options as it relates to these exemptions.
Michelle, the impact of just leaving it as is that the tax burden would be spread over many, many households over the district at a limited dollar amount.
Correct.
Versus directly impacting seniors with limited income.
Correct. So as it stands right now, the Suffolk County adopted options 1 and 3, the Social Security and the medical expenses, and Islip, Smithtown, and Brookhaven adopted option 2. So there's differences across all of our towns here.
Okay. So I'm going to open up questions to the board. If there's questions to the board, I also want to give, is there any community members here for this particular item that wanted to speak or address the board on this tax exemption? None? Okay. Any questions? Good. Stephanie?
So if I'm understanding it correctly, 1 and 3 would actually help the disabled and elderly?
Yes, it would increase the pool of individuals that were eligible for this exemption.
And then we could adopt both?
You could adopt all 3, or you can choose to do nothing.
I don't know if this is a question for you. For the district, which would be financially beneficial, would it be to keep things the same and, realize that everybody's being hit by this economy equally, or vote to help our, poor?
So for the district, it doesn't not impact the district directly financially, because when we go out for our levy, we go out with a dollar amount, and that's since the property tax cap came into play. There's no more setting a tax rate, or we now go out with a dollar amount and say, this is what we need in our budget for the upcoming school year. And the district gets that. How the district gets it depends on all of the assessed values, grievances, exemptions that are out there, and how that then gets allocated across all of the residents.
Stephanie, we're going to get we ask for the voters give us a pot of money. It's going to come from that pot. Depending on what option we pick, it will come from different pockets in that pot, but we will
Right.
still get it. So the district doesn't have there's no benefit to the district overall. This is about the taxpayers.
But we still are impacting our district's taxpayers
Yes.
differently by which way we vote,
That's correct.
right? But so
And we
I
don't
struggle-
know what that impact would be. The assessors, and I hate to throw them on the spot, but Mr. Sachs was in those meetings with me. They can't actually quantify that for us right now.
Okay.
It's really after the fact. They could look back next year at this year and say, all right, we saw a shift in tax money or the tax burden from, people with exemptions to people without exemptions by the tune of, X dollars. They gave an example like
So
that.
it might be premature. Maybe, can we do this next year?
I believe we can opt in, like if we don't opt in now and by March 1st, there's no change for this upcoming 24-25 tax cycle.
Okay.
But I believe we can opt in future years.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Sarnia?
Michelle, just so I understand, if we choose to do nothing, it would stay as it is today, and the rate would affect the homestead rate, which would apply to all properties across the district, right?
Correct.
That's
Correct.
as it's done today.
Okay. Any comments from the board? Good. I'm sorry, Meredith.
Michelle, the way that it's done today, we all take equally, like Mike just said. We all share the burden, but people like seniors are negatively impacted currently. And then 1 in 3 would be better for them.
Well, every person's situation is different. So if a senior or a disabled individual with limited income has an annuity, right now, the income they receive from that annuity is not counted in that calculation. But if you voted for option 2, it would be counted in that calculation. So now they might not be eligible for that exemption anymore.
I guess I'm just confused because as a regular everyday homeowner, I don't think my income ever has anything to do with how much I pay my property taxes. But are you saying for seniors and disabled people it does?
That they can apply for an exemption based on their income level.
Okay. So then I see number 2, why it would be such a burden to them. But now I'm still on the fence about the rest. Thank you.
Sarnia?
Michelle, options 1 and 3 are not age specific, though, like option 2. Is option 2 65 and disabled? Option 1 would be
All 3 options only apply to seniors and disabled individuals with limited income.
okay. So it's not okay. That's what I wanted to know. Thanks.
Any other questions? I guess the only other thing I have to say is that threshold right now is for individuals who qualify for that senior exemption. They have to make $29,000 or less. So if we were to go with option 2, okay, and they saw a $3,000 or $4,000 increase in their taxes as a result of not qualifying for that exemption, that's a pretty big percentage in their increase.
Correct.
Yeah, so it would be more detrimental to them versus spreading it out to the entire community.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. If there's no other comment or questions on item 5E and F, okay, there's a resolution on the agenda. Okay, the recommendation from the district is option 2. The board at that particular point in time will have the opportunity to vote yes or no. If it fails, okay, there is no other resolution, so it would remain the same. All right, did everybody understand that? Okay. All right. If there's no other comments, I need a motion to close the public hearing. Alex, second. Ms. Sarnia. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. We move now on to the opening of the regular meeting. The meeting is now in order. I want to ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, remain standing for a moment of silent meditation. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We turn the meeting over to Dr. Pelletieri for the superintendent's We Are Station report.
Thank you very much, President Scawa. We're going to jump right in with our this time of year, as you know, budget's always a priority, but this time of year, especially, we do a lot of presentations, inform the community as much as possible about budget preparation. So, Michelle, I'm going to ask you and Ron to jump in. Thank you.
So we are about to begin budget workshop number 2. I just want to thank Mr. Sachs for, handling budget workshop number 1. I think he did a great job at the last board meeting. I did watch the entire thing. Nerd alert. So tonight we're going to recap workshop number 1 very briefly, just some changes since we had that board meeting 3 weeks ago. We are going to look at our expenditure codes that relate to our student activities and our support services, and then we will discuss next steps. So in our first presentation, we had the property tax levy, or the projected property tax levy. As of right now, nothing has changed with that. We are looking at a 1.92% levy that is after allowable exclusions. So the state comptroller's office requires that we submit our levy calculation by March 1st. So I will be submitting these figures to the comptroller's office this Friday. Once they are submitted, it's not final. If any material information should come up that would change the levy or anything that would require that we adjust the levy, we can always go in and request that the comptroller's office unsubmit it, and then we can recalculate it. So while they say it's final, it's not final until usually around June. So state aid, budget to budget comparison, the main change on this slide over what we had at the first presentation is that we are calculating that the New York State Assembly and the Senate are going to be successful in achieving that hold harmless that we have had for the last several years. I know that in the governor's proposal, she did away with what they call save harmless, and they had she had a transition adjustment, which resulted in a reduction of our foundation aid of approximately $875,000. Whereas if the hold harmless had been in place, we were seeing for the past several years a 3% increase over the current year's foundation aid. So we had a legislative breakfast, and there's been all sorts of talk on all of the listservs that this is not going to go through the way it is, that at least at a minimum, the hold harmless would come back. So right now I'm using those assumptions in our state aid projections and saying that we are going to see a $2.8 million increase in our foundation aid. That would be the 3%. Overall, that's a swing of $3.7 million because we're going from a negative $875,000 to a positive $2.8 million. But if anything should change with that, obviously, then we would change our assumptions of our state aid. So overall, our proposed revenue is looking at $372.9 million. That's a $9.1 million increase over the current school year. And again, we're looking at $3.75 million increase in the state aid, assuming we get that hold harmless. And we had some other adjustments in our other revenue categories to the tune of about $250,000. So that's where we're seeing that increase on the revenue side of our budget.
Rob, can I ask a question? Just so we don't go too far.
Yep.
What's the timeline of us maybe finding out if that is coming back? And then if it doesn't hit to a certain date, then we have to make adjustments on our budget.
So everything that we're hearing right now is that there is not going to be an on-time budget. So that would be normally by April 1st. We are scheduled to adopt the budget on April 16th. I would have to look at the dates on the calendar if things were really kind of crazy and we had to push that. That is not the the absolute deadline for adopting the budget, and we might have to push back to that date. But we could do that. So we don't know what's happening with the state, but as we do get closer, I'll be monitoring that. And if we have to.
So what's like the drop dead date for us where we print ballots, we go out to the public?
I think the absolute deadline is more towards the end of April, like the 20th is the absolute last day you can adopt. But I'd have to look at that calendar, the legal calendar, but I'll let you know on that one. So our non-instructional codes that were discussed last time, the main thing I want to show you here is that we're looking at approximately a $1.2 million reduction over what was presented in the budget at the last meeting. And most of that is related to payroll taxes and retirement system contributions, as we've been getting notifications of staff members that are putting in for retirement. We're able to adjust the employee benefit side of it from the non-instructional codes. At our next presentation, we'll be looking at curriculum, and you'll see where we've put all of our staff members that are retiring in through there. So now we're going to go on to the expenditures for student activities and support services. So I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Sachs.
Thank you. So the first section we're going to look at this evening is going to be interscholastic athletics, phys ed, and health services. You'll see the first section, interscholastic athletics administration. We have a $21,520 increase, or 3%. That's salary driven. It's a contractual salaries. The next section, physical education, you'll see a slight decrease, 2.62%, or $1,400. That's a reduction in supplies for physical education. The next section, health services, you'll see a 7.73% increase, or $190,688. That's driven, the increase is driven by salaries and physician services. And when I mention salaries, that's primarily our nursing staff. The increase in physician services is attributed to the district taking on a new district physician. The next section, interscholastic athletics, you'll see a 5.91% increase, or $190,421. What's driving that increase is supplies and materials for interscholastic athletics. The cost of materials and supplies is going up due to inflation. That's what's driving it. Okay, I just want to let everybody know that we're continuing to work with the athletic department on their budget. We have a few options in place at this time. We're looking for somewhere in the area of $300,000 to $400,000 in decreases without affecting any program.
So Ron, materials, can you give us an example of what materials and supplies we're talking about?
Helmets, football helmets.
Okay. Things like, okay.
Yeah, uniforms.
Ron, I don't mean to be a smartass when I say this, but where do you think $300,000 and $400,000 is coming from athletics?
Well,
I mean, if there's really nothing that could be cut without negatively affecting anything.
We actually did meet with our athletic directors, and we have some ideas on areas where we can trim back across all areas in the department, all sports, without actually cutting any programs. Like we're looking at, was it decreasing the number of
games, scrimmages.
So like, I understand we need to look, but that will negatively impact. Like, you know, if I coach at a neighboring school and I'm allowed 16 league games, 4 non-league games, I'm allowed as many scrimmages as I want. How would you say that the Sachem kids who now don't will be as prepared as the kids that they need to go up and compete against that do? We just have to be careful of what we're willing. I know that we're talking, and I know everything's on the table and it's part of the conversation, but we've really got to be careful with, we still want to put the kids in the most successful spot as they can. And if we start talking about assistant coaches, scrimmages, non-league games, we should certainly not be talking about helmets when that comes to safety. Like we just have to be careful. That's all. I know that everything's on the table, but we've got to be careful.
Yeah, without a doubt, that'll be presented to the board and to the community. Anything like that, much as we did the first iteration of our budget presentation, we went back, looked at things, and said, "Hey, we can look at this. We can look at that. Do we necessarily need to make that purchase of smartboard technologies this year? Can we put that off for another year? Do we need to buy that many Chromebooks this year? Can we put it?" So much like that, we'll have those same conversations with athletics. So I don't know what number we'll look at, but certainly we'll have that conversation, and nothing would be done in a way that would obviously bring harm to anybody in terms of safety issues, things such as that.
I just asked that we are in the conversation
Sure.
with
Oh,
anything that,
absolutely.
that gets.
Yeah.
mentioned.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Yeah, Ron, in the health services line, are we still carrying a nurse for the charter school?
Yes,
And when do we expect that? This is their last year?
that's what they're saying.
Yeah, our hope, Mr. Iserni, is that this, my understanding is it is going down to Central Islip, and therefore it would be in another district, and we would not be responsible for that, the payment of those services.
But they intend to be in the boundaries for the coming school year. So that number's not going to even be adjusted like halfway through the year when they move. That's not going to happen, right?
For next
Yeah,
year?
we don't know when they're moving.
Yeah. My sense is that they're going to, I was told they're going to start their new year in September in their new facility in Central Islip.
So if that's the case, then we lower that, reduce that line?
Potentially, we'll have to see. That line is not
Well,
just
it's
for the
not
nurse.
just for the nurse for the charter school. That's the health services that we have to pay to the districts that have private and parochial schools where any of our students attend.
Oh,
So
no, I get that. Okay. Right, but right now there is a salary in that line.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Certainly, we're hoping to be able
Mike,
to
I don't-
reduce
I
that.
don't think we'd be able to reduce the budget once it passes. But I guess what would happen is that
You'd
money
have a
would be
surplus.
transferred- It would be transferred to a different budget line.
You'd have a surplus in that code.
Okay, Meredith?
I just wanted to, before we go further into things, I just wanted to ask about what's about the latest time that New York State adopts? Like, I know last year they pushed and pushed. And so if they adopt their budget really late, but we're not allowed to adopt our budget really late, right? They can go as long as they can go,
Right.
but we're not allowed
We have
to
a
do that.
deadline from when we have to adopt our budget. So we would have to, and it's happened in the past. I think it's many years where it went, I think, believe into May.
Yes.
Or even beyond. We would have to adopt based on the assumptions that we have and the estimates that we have at that time.
So now what happens if we kind of push everything forward thinking that our politicians are going to actually do what they've said that they're going to do? Pretty rare. And we go ahead and say, okay, they're going to not push through a budget unless it has the hold harmless in it. We put all our eggs in that basket, and then they push and they push until all the school districts have to adopt their budgets. And then all the school districts adopt their budgets based on what the politicians say they're going to do.
Mhm.
And then the politicians become politicians and don't do what they said. And then we're left holding the bag.
So if that hold harmless doesn't come through, it's $3.7 million and a lot of money, but our overall budget is about $380 million, $385 million. So for $3 million, we would be able to move on with the school year and tighten our belts. And, quite honestly, with supplies and certain materials and equipment, and if we didn't order, we would be able to get through. But we would need everybody on board to say, really look at what your needs are, and do you need it this year?
So every stakeholder in the entire district would have to give a little for us all to not
and that
really
would
affect the
be-
kids as badly.
Right, and that would be, we'd already have, adopted that budget. So, and if it went through to where we're in May and the community approved that budget, we're moving forward with that budget. So if some of our revenue stream doesn't get recognized, well, then we might have a deficit that year, unless we have, savings in other areas. And that's where, Mr. Sachs prepares that report that goes out starting in January, where we say we think we're going to end the year and we have surpluses in various codes, and that's where we would be.
All right. I just don't trust a lot of things lately. Sorry.
You'd have to find the money in the budget, and
I know. I just don't want us to find it on the backs of the children.
Yeah, no, I understand.
We tend to, everybody says kids first. And then when it comes down to it, there's not every single stakeholder saying, oh, I'll take this on and I'll take that on. No, it's like we just go through this whole cycle where the kids end up taking it on the back. And I don't want to see that continue to happen.
Any other questions or comments on this slide?
Okay, so the next slide for interscholastic athletics maps out all of our athletic teams. You'll see we have 35 varsity teams. We have 19 JV teams. We have 26 middle school teams for a total of 80 different teams. In addition to that, we added unified bowling and unified basketball. If you look to the right on this chart, you'll see the costs by fall, winter, and spring. These costs only include personnel to run the teams. Supplies are not included in these costs. Reconditioning is not included in these costs. These are your coaching salaries, your scorers, your timers, costs for intramurals, physicals. Any questions on this slide?
Ron, or maybe Chris is better to talk about this. Can you just talk about what the unified program is? And why we thought that we
Yeah.
definitely should be adding it?
The opportunity for our special education students to partner with general education students and have these opportunities in bowling and what's basketball. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I met some of the kids over at North the other day going to the unified bowling. So it just speaks for itself, Alex, right? That opportunity for our kids who are most at risk and can make partnerships and friendships that last a lifetime, and they're on a competitive field. You know, bowling, basketball is just really inspirational to see and be a part of that. So yes, without a doubt, we full force ahead with that.
Okay, so now we're going to look at our student services, CSC, and related services codes. So first we have our special education code, and this is our contractual salaries, tuition, private and public placements, BOCES services. So you'll see there's a $5.3 million change budget to budget, or a 10.3% increase. And if you look at the box at the bottom, that we kind of break down what makes up that total of what we call the 2250 codes of special education. And when you see staff salaries increase of $2.6 million or 7%, that's not an increase in their salaries of 7%. But we did have quite a number of staff members that were in various grants, the federal ESSER grants, and also we had the 611 ARP grants. These are all the grants that are expiring at the end of this school year. So we had to move those individuals back into the general fund. We started by taking all of those grants that are expiring, moving into general, and then seeing from there what we can keep. So those were staff members, the majority of which, about $1.1 million, that came back from grants. And then the other biggest driver is our BOCES placements and related services. That's an estimated increase of $2.1 million. Actually, tomorrow, the BOCES portal opens up, and that's where we'll be able to see what the actual rates are. And for our next presentation on the 13th, we'll have, more, tighter figures when it comes to our BOCES figures. And then our Committee on Special Education, you'll see a $40,000 increase there. Those are our related services, our physical therapy, our occupational therapy, and some of our nursing services. And then with our psychologists and our social workers, those are all contractual salaries. And again, those increases are from staff members that were in grants that are now being pulled into the general fund. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Sorry, I had one. I'm sorry, get stuff.
It's quick. I know that the Budget Advisory Committee had asked last year if it would be cheaper to pull these OT, PT, speech into district paid positions instead of us going to
Outside
agencies.
agencies.
Yeah. Is that anything that we looked into recently, since there's been such increases in and having such a hard time finding these people to work?
I don't know that we have trouble finding the OTs and PTs. I believe it's the nursing services that we have trouble with, but I do know districts that do employ OT and PT are staff members, and it is a lower rate than what you're paying for an agency. So that is something that we could look into.
Is that something we could look into to help this current budget?
Yeah, we can look into that.
Okay, thanks.
Alex?
Do you know, Michelle, of the BOCES placements, how much of this increase is driven by more of our students going there compared to what they're raising us? Because they use a ton of our space, a ton. I don't know why we can't get them back at the table and say, you can't be increasing us more than we're increasing you, and you're just drowning us in
So
fees.
right now, the average increase is looking like about 3.89% on their services. I will tell you on their Tecumseh lease, we are increasing them 5% this year. They were not happy about that. We have more students going into these programs, and we also we have students that we know are in the programs that are going to continue in the programs. And when we met with the Office of Student Services, we do know that we have packets out there for about 10 additional students that we're waiting to hear for placements. So it's just increasing.
You know, we talk about partnering with the state all the time, and they're not the greatest of partners, obviously, but you know, this is something that we can control. They use a ton of, you know, buildings that our taxpayers paid for. We should be able to sit back at the table with them and negotiate really the best of rates, considering what we're sending to them and what they're using from us.
See,
Just
right.
in general, in theory, anyway.
I agree in theory. I don't know that they're allowed to do that when we're in this cooperative. You can't charge one district a more favorable rate than you're charging another
Doesn't
that's in
seem
the
very
same.
cooperative if they're using our space. It's just,
Alex, in the end, when they raise, if we raise the rent, okay, they raise the tuition and the administrative cost to all of the districts that actually subscribe to them. So in essence, we almost, shoot ourselves in the foot, in doing that. I mean, but it would get shared amongst 52 other districts, But you're right. I mean, they should be raising this more than we're raising them. So, Mike.
Michelle, just so I didn't catch the whole number, but in that $5.3 million, how much of that represents transfer from what was on the grants until now what's going back into the general budget?
I can tell you for salaries, it was about just under $1.2 million of that 5.3 was salaries that were in the grants that were moving back into general. Then we have some programs that we have through BOCES that we're moving back, not just salaries, but programs that were paid for through our grants, like our Northwell program that we're moving back into general, things like that.
What was the total grant allocation in the last budget? How many millions was that? Do you remember?
Oh gosh, I'd have to look that up for you. 25 million.
There were the two federal grants, Mr. Iserni. It was about $22 million.
Yeah.
And all that money is now dried up.
It will be by the end of this school year.
Just to finish,
Yeah,
I just want to ask.
Yeah, I was just going to
Mike?
I was piggybacking on
Okay,
that with the
good.
grants, right? Could we get a listing of what were those grants apply to? Like what made up, right? 'Cause
Oh.
we're putting a lot of stuff back into the budget. So we're trying to figure out, like right here, is there like $7 million that was grants that's now making up this increase here?
Say that again.
So
It's not 7.
5.7.
point-
Okay, so we got 5.7. So out of that, seems like a lot of it was grant money.
Well,
So to
there was
Chris's-
about off the top of my head, I could tell you there's at least 1.4 million. Yes, 1.4 million from the grants
Okay.
that came into general. And that's a combination of salaries and like BOCES programs.
So can we get a summary of the 22 million in grants and what was it spent on last year? And what are we
Absolutely.
rolling into this budget?
It
Absolutely.
What are we
wasn't spent in
keeping?
1 year, obviously, right? We've had that money
Couple
for
years.
several
Yeah, yeah.
years. Yeah, and it finishes out this year. And Mr. Scavo, you're going to say something. I'm going to add something as well.
Michelle, I just want to, those positions that we're putting back into the budget that were originally funded by the grants, were those positions new positions?
It was a mix.
So did they come out of the Title I and Title IX grants, or did it come out of other grants initially within our budget, and then we just rolled it into?
It was a combination of everything. Some came out of some of our title grants. Some came out of our general fund, then went into the new federal grants. Some were new positions. Some of the staff members that were in the federal grants were existing staff members many years,
Mhm.
but some were just moved into the grants. So it's
So
a mix.
So to finish, but could we get a list of
Mhm.
positions that were brand new to the
Yep.
district as a result of the emergency grant money that we received? And how much of that are we rolling into?
Absolutely.
That are new positions within our budget?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Good, Meredith?
Can you tell me when the Northwell expires? When our partnership with Northwell expires? Like we have
We
to,
renew that every year.
right, when did we renew it last?
We do it for each the start of each school year. So when I say like the portal opens tomorrow and we have like about 6 weeks to put in all of our commitments, that Northwell is a cross contract with Western Suffolk BOCES. They're the ones that handle the Northwell. So we'll put that in as part of our commitments to BOCES as a program that we
Does
would
that
want to move forward with.
require the board to vote again each year on it as to whether it's working for us, it's worth the money that we're spending and we want to keep it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, the portal opens tomorrow. We start putting, data into it. But when we look at everything, I know Mrs. Hines and I are going to be sitting down and really going through all of these BOCES commitments to see what do we actually use. It's very easy sometimes to like just keep rolling forward, and maybe you're not using a particular program or service, to its full extent. Maybe we have something better in district and we don't need it anymore. So we're going to do a sit down and really line by line it and see what we could cut just off the bat that's not impacting any of our students or any of our programs. And then if we're still in our budget bind with a gap, we would come back to the board and say, here's where we are and here are some options on.
Okay,
What we
because
can
I
do.
know that one of the board members asked, for a full breakdown on Northwell and what it's done for us and our students, and I know that we got that. Is that something that we can share with the public where we can say that we had this amount of, because I would like, if we're, what are we spending, 100 and something thousand a year? If we're spending that kind of money, the taxpayers should know and kind of let them decide like it was helpful or it wasn't helpful.
Right.
And then there are other programs out there, like there are some programs that are actually, maybe they're not as intense as Northwell, but there are free programs out there. And right now, free programs probably a good thing.
Yes.
Stephanie?
One thing that out of everything that we've offered recently, our mental health services, including Northwell, has been the most positive feedback I've gotten from the community. I don't know if everybody else has heard the same, but the parents that have utilized the referrals to Northwell, even through the district, I don't know if it's the same if administration's hearing it when teachers use it, but it has been a really positive impact to get our kids help. There's in the special needs world, I've gotten back feedback where they've been expedited into situations that they couldn't get on their own as far as support and help.
Yeah, that's definitely good feedback. And I would never want to, do anything that impacts mental
I'm
health
hoping
of the
everybody else is
students.
hearing the same. If not,
But-
everybody tell the other board members
Yeah.
because we've
I've
heard a
never
lot of
actually
positive.
had any interaction with it, so I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I sent that thing to you guys the other day that there's a program for our teens that's 100% free to them. So that's another thing that if somebody's in crisis,
Absolutely.
that's free. There's another one that Dr. Pelletieri sent out. So I would love to see exactly what results we're getting for the 100 and some odd thousand that we're
I
spending.
think that was in a Friday packet, right? We got all the stats and it's pretty
we
overwhelming.
got
right?
stats of how many referrals
Yeah,
and things
which
like
that's
that,
the
but
po-
I'm
that's the
not
point of it, yeah.
right. But I mean, okay, I guess I
No.
just don't understand.
Yeah, let's look at the stats and share
referral.
it because it's out there, right? So-
Yeah, I just don't understand I guess I don't understand the value of that referral. The value of a crisis hotline, I understand the value of, but the value of that Northwell referred to another Northwell place,
I can explain that whole system. That goes into the healthcare part of it. So it's actually not, we wouldn't get feedback because we're not allowed to get that kind of feedback, right?
Yes.
So you'd have to have a parent come tell you, oh my God, it helped my kids so much. So we couldn't even ask for those stats because it's in the healthcare world once it transfers over. So we can only get the referral numbers, but it would help a lot if the parents whose kids were helped would give us feedback so we know that the program is valuable. I've received a lot of that.
I think the feedback is the kids showing back up to school at some point and not something worse.
Or
I think that's
not,
part of the feedback.
Also not necessarily only school.
Yeah.
But,
I'm just saying.
there's mental health issues that might have been overcome,
Right, so
which we
so-
don't see.
Any information that you could provide, Dr. Pelletieri, to kind of explain how that 100,000 or 100
Sure.
is spent. I think that's what the board's looking for. All right.
Yeah.
Michelle?
I'm going to just jump in for 1 second and just talk about, Mr. Iserni, you mentioned those federal grants. And so during the time of the pandemic, this district, the nation went through a national mental health crisis and it's still going through that. And some of those federal funds went to hiring 5 social workers, 1 in every secondary building, and almost 200,000, about 170,000 or so is for that Northwell program. And so it's a shame that while still in the midst of this mental health crisis, we are losing those grants. Those grant opportunities are going away, and we're trying to fit them into a budget that has a tax cap that is going to push come to shove, force us to make some really tough decisions across the board.
Chris, there was an announcement today. I think I saw the governor on News 12 or something this morning. She increased the fund by another 20 or 25 million for mental health for school districts. So we may want to look at that.
Yeah,
Right.
she's building clinics inside of
Something-
school districts. That's
Yeah,
not
I don't know
something
what
that
that means. If
necessarily
it's something you guys look at, but yeah.
we look at all those things, Mr. Reynolds. What happens is we don't qualify many times for those grants. And
Yeah, I think I heard it in passing. There was money, so I just kind of made a
oh
mental
no,
note
believe
to
me,
ask.
anytime it's
So,
money, yeah, Michelle and Ron and we are on it. Yes, sir.
Michelle, do you move on?
Okay, the next section we're going to cover is the federal programs, AIS, CNL, and co-curricular. Federal programs, we have a $3,018 increase or 2.14%. What's driving that is contractual salaries, 2 contractual salaries to be exact. The next area is special needs. I just want to mention before we get into special needs, this is not OSS special education. This is AIS, ENL, remedial reading, remedial math. There is a $557,517 increase or 8.64%. We have some key drivers that are attributing to this percentage increase. 4 staff members moving from expiring grants into the general fund. 3 staff members hired after the 23-24 current budget was adopted, and 1 new position has been added into the special needs section. The next area of this, yes.
And then now we're putting them back in. The 4 staff members and also the 3 additional staff members that were hired at the 23-24. What area were they hired in? Was it AIS? Was it ENL?
Speech.
Speech, okay.
Yes.
And then the 1 new position?
Do we know?
Melissa Veltri.
What-
That
what area?
was the person, the data expert that we
Okay.
hired from BOCES.
Okay,
And the 4 staff members, well, I'll get back to you on if they were new or existing employees.
thank you.
Okay. So then we have the co-curricular activity section, a $5,600 increase or 0.99%. This is our stipend section of the budget.
Any
Any
questions from the board?
questions?
Okay, so just to recap, the student activities and student support services areas. So we covered athletics, student services, and our federal programs in AIS. This is a total of $78.7 million of our budget. It's a $6.7 million increase budget to budget, or 9.38%. So currently, the final proposed budget is still to be determined. We're still working on our estimates and getting new data in. But as of right now, we have a budget, appropriation budget of approximately $386.1 million, which represents a $22.3 million increase or 6.13% budget to budget over the 23-24 school year. Our revenues, based on the assumption that we are getting that hold harmless, are projected to be $372.9 million, so that our expenditure over revenue, we still have a budget gap of $13.2 million. So as we do get more information, we do get more notifications of retirees, we put that information in. So I do believe the next presentation on March 13th will really have some more finite numbers in it for us to address. But so far, we've covered the non-instructional at $186.7 million, or 48% of our budget, and student activities and support services, which are the $78 million, or 20% of our budget. So right now, next steps, this Friday, I will file the tax levy with the state comptroller's office, like we discussed earlier. And then we have budget development meeting number 3 on the 13th for curriculum. There's no formal presentation scheduled for the 20th, but as we get new information, we might throw one in there because I know everybody looks forward to that. And then the final meeting on the 3rd, which will encompass all of, our final figures. It'll finalize the capital projects. We'll look towards the next meeting. We'll also include discussion on the softball fields from the capital reserve and things of that nature. And then budget adoption on the 16th of April, the budget hearing on the 8th of May, and then our vote on the 21st. Does anyone have any other questions?
That budget adoption we have to do it on that day. It can't be moved back.
Well, we schedule it when we have a board meeting, so we might have to add a board
special.
meeting, a special meeting to do an adoption if we see things are getting really crazy with the state and they haven't adopted their budget. So that we can still leave open. I will, in the Friday packet, I'll let you know what the last date that we can actually adopt our budget is.
A question, Meredith?
What would happen if we didn't adopt and we waited for the state to adopt theirs? Like if the state was still in talks and they didn't adopt yet, what would happen if we didn't adopt? What happens to the district?
That would be a legal question for Mr. Block.
You have to have the budget adopted at least 3 days before the military ballots go out. So this year, I believe that date is April 23rd is the date that the budget would have to be adopted by.
What we're saying is, what if the district decided we're not adopting because you state didn't adopt? We don't know our revenue,
Right.
so
Well, then you're going to be hearing from the state that you have an obligation to adopt your budget.
Well, so does the state.
Well, you'll go back.
And we
forth with
tell them that.
but
I
then
mean-
they control our aid.
Meredith, do you want to send a letter first?
What if every district that's being negatively affected got together and did the same thing and said, we're not going to adopt until you guys adopt?
I can't answer that hypothetical.
So hopefully it's adopted by that point, and we're
Yeah.
not dealing with that, guessing game, of where's our number? Is it the whole harmless number or not? So,
I just hope that we're not left with another $3 million, $3.7 million because the politicians didn't do what they said they would do.
questions?
Yeah, let's just clarify which politicians, because we have a ton of friends up there fighting for us, and you say it as like such a blanket statement, but Senator Murray, Assemblyman Smith, right? Senator
White.
Palumbo.
I've
Senator
watched
White-
people on both sides
hold on,
fight
hold
for
on.
something, and then
Just-
I've watched
sorry,
Meredith,
them
just
go
1 minute.
back.
Just
If it
one
was-
person has the
if-
floor at a time.
Considering I'm with them all day, every day, they're fighting for us every single day. If it was up to them, we'd have every penny back. But we're in the minority, and we'll just fight, and we'll hope that the other side wakes up and we get our money. But don't blanket spray it with just all politicians not doing their job, because they're literally up there Monday to Thursday away from their families fighting so that we don't have to raise or even think about raising above the cap. That's what they're doing every single day during the week.
I appreciate
alright.
everybody that advocates for us completely, but
But we should just
I
be
don't-
specific who's in
Hold
the
on, guys.
minority and who's
we
in the
can't be
majority.
Hold on.
specific because it
Guys,
happens on both sides.
The way it's going to work is one board member has the floor when that person's
Yeah.
done. then we
I
go to
I
the
just
next
think we
person.
need to pay attention more closely, because
Okay.
we can't just blanket it and attack our friends while they're up there fighting for us.
All right, Alex, Meredith, you have the floor. Any other?
I'm not attacking our friends. I'm saying that every politician, I don't care what side you come from, and everybody obviously knows which side I lean towards. I don't care what side they're on. Every single politician should stick to what they said they would do and do it. And if our friends are fighting for us, that's wonderful. I just don't want to see any friend cave and not fight for us or vote in a certain manner, because I've seen a lot of that lately. I've seen a lot of it everywhere, where everybody says they're going to do something for you and then they don't. And then, unfortunately, it's always us that's left holding the bag. It's never them. They don't lose their benefits. They don't lose their pensions. They don't lose their houses. The regular everyday person is the one who gets it. So at the end of the day, nobody's your friend. If you're losing your house, nobody's your friend.
All right.
It's just the truth.
Any other comments? Sabrina?
I think my biggest concern still is that even if all that does come through, we still have a $13.2 million deficit. Where are we covering that?
Well, those are the next
Right. So
conversations.
I think
that-
it's
yeah.
it's kind of calm here, but I'm not calm. You know, that
We're
could be
not calm
devastating.
upstairs
No, I
either,
know,
but-
but I just want the community to know.
Yes, yes.
This is a big deal.
It's a very
Like,
large
as
number.
a parent and taxpayer, I'm extremely concerned about
Right.
that 13 too,
Right.
because there are a
So-
lot of cuts that could be made that I don't want to make.
Right.
That we've been seeing huge progressions in the district and in all schools. This isn't just HM that's facing it. We still have a $3.2 million deficit. If
13.
that money, 13, what did I say?
Three.
Sorry.
I'd be
I wish
jumping
it
up and
was
down
three.
for three.
13.2. That's a big deal. I
Yes.
think
Yes.
the community and taxpayers, it shouldn't just be us and our politicians fighting. We as a community have to being vocal that they want us to worry about mental health and they want us to move on to project-based learning and do all these wonderful things in our schools,
And then they don't.
but they're
wanna
not
fund it.
giving us the money.
Correct.
Where do they think it grows on trees? So I'm just saying this for the community. This is scary.
Yes.
This is not something we should be taking lightly. And we as a community have to come together and tell the state that we want the money that we pay taxes, we want that back to our schools.
Correct.
That's it.
I
And
agree.
then we as a community have to start. Otherwise, we're going to see sports being cut, teachers being cut, custodians, nurses. I don't want to do that. That's extremely scary, that number. And I think that needs to be put out there, because where are we going to do that? Where are we going to make up that gap? And again, who gets affected the most? Our kids. They're not going to have clubs to go to after school. They're not going to have sports to play. Their teachers are no longer going to be with them. That's extremely devastating. So that has to be vocal, not just by our politicians, not just by school boards writing letters. Our community, our staff members, everybody needs to start being really vocal and saying, give us back the money. We pay this money. We all pay our taxes. We're all homeowners. We want that money back to our schools and our community. That's it.
Mr. Reynolds?
So it's an iterative process. So I think, right, like last year, we're going to do it, but it's an alarming number. What's also alarming is the budget is keep going up by what, another 22 million? And every year we keep going up. We were burning $1 million a day last year. Now we're over $1 million a day. So again, it's just something to keep an eye on. This budget keeps going up. We're going to be at 400 million before you know it. All right. So
Ms. Spalby?
To piggyback on what Sabrina said, you know, to hear $25 million is getting put into mental health, but none of that is qualifying for people on Long Island. Basically, every district on Long Island is not qualifying for that because it's going into clinics that we don't need because we have healthcare readily available. That's where the community could step up and say, why are you not giving us some mental health resources? Our kids are struggling. You know, we have mental health issues in this district, and to not get our cut of our taxes is a huge problem, but that's where the community would have to rally and start to be heard.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, when you say, $25 million in mental health, when Race to the Top came through, there was a $700 million grant that was given to New York State. Sitchin received 89,000 of the 700 million. So just think about what we would receive of the $25 million. It's peanuts. It wouldn't make a dent in this budget. So yeah. So, all right. Michelle, you'll update us as things happen. That $13 million, okay, deficit is very scary. We've been there before. It's not conversations you want to have. As Sabrina said, student impacting programs and opportunities and co-curricular clubs. These are all things that would change the face of Sachem. And we know from history that when our kids don't have anything to do at the school, that's when they get into, issues and problems and in trouble, So we want to keep them as busy as possible. And we want to ensure that, that we get our fair share. I understand the frustration up here. I've been here 2012. It's like, there's deja vu all over again, right? Yogi Berra said it. We don't want to go back to the point. We worked so hard over the last 10 to 12 years to replenish our reserves. And now we have a different governor, okay, saying the same thing as the last governor, which is, use your reserves, and that's what happened last time. And we went down to $16,000, so that strategy does not work. It's not something that we can do. Certainly we appreciate all of our local elected officials that are up there fighting. I know they are fighting. But I think we have to direct our anger and disappointment to the governor, the head of the assembly, the head of the Senate, and sit, let them know that this is unacceptable. We have to get our fair share because We don't want to tear down in 1 year what we've been building up in the last 10 years. So thank you for the presentation, and we look forward to the next one. Thank you, Michelle. Dr. Pelletier, any other updates?
Mr. Scarabino, just budget for today. I think we can move forward at this point.
Okay. All right, Dylan, you're up. And student report.
All right, keeping it brief. Sorry. Tomorrow we have the blood drive at North, and yeah, that's pretty important, as Meredith just said, and nobody heard that. And really, only other thing going on is we have our March Madness going on. Signups are closing in about a week. It's $30 per team, and a lot of that money is going towards scholarships at the end of the year for seniors. So I want a little scholarship money, so I'm hoping more people sign up. And one more thing that Meredith wanted me to acknowledge, wrestling just won leagues, and yeah,
I think we may need to separate you two.
it's a little bit of under the table stuff going on over here. All right.
Dylan,
Thank
can you
Dylan.
mention East Cheerleading heading to states? Because they won as well. So they're heading to states this weekend.
It's a little bit of a sore subject because North came in second in counties, but wherever Dom is, we don't know.
Thank you, Dylan.
And then
Appreciate
don't Arrowets go to nationals this week? Okay.
Okay. Brings us to item D, the approval of the minutes for the February 7th meeting. And a motion, please, Stephanie, second. Mike Cerny. Questions or discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, brings us to the public comment. Just before we start the public comment, just real quick, I'll just go over, there's a 3-minute time limit for all visitors wishing to speak. Speakers must wait until they're recognized by the president of the board before speaking. Board of Education president reserves the right to ask individuals who are rude, disrespectful, and disruptive to not continue his or her comments. Debate between the members and the audience and/or the Board of Education members is inappropriate, will not be permitted. Board of Education will not permit discussion involving individuals, district personnel, students, community members. Persons wishing to discuss matters involving individual district personnel or students should contact the superintendent's office during regular business hours. Any unruly or disruptive members of the audience of the meeting of the Board of Education may be removed at the discretion of the president. All right, so I'm going to call up, we only have 2 cards. Deborah Kelton.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I simply do not recognize a world in which my school district, Board of Ed, superintendent, school medical doctor, and a principal wouldn't be on board to medically protect and do no further harm to a minor child. With this child's numerous lifelong medical doctors and specialists, along with their attorney, stating otherwise. Since when do educators with no degree to practice medicine have the final say over a child's doctor's orders as to whether that child, an American citizen, can obtain an education inside of a school building, of which is constitutionally protected, whether you believe that or not? As adults, most of you up here are parents or grandparents yourselves, so I cannot comprehend how any of you would not be standing up so boldly to protect this child and her family and protecting her life. And yes, I said life. This is a young girl's life we are talking about. You cannot possibly think taking a gamble with any pharmaceutical drug is ethical in any way. Sachem's new medical doctor apparently does not take his Hippocratic oath seriously. If he isn't in the business of doing so, he shouldn't be in business here at Sachem. To the community's knowledge, our new medical doctor is taking away other previously approved medical exemptions from our Sachem youth. One must ask themselves, is there an incentive for this new doctor to be canceling out previously approved medical exemptions? Suspicious, to say the least. In the case I am speaking of, this young lady has already had a 6-year medical exemption, which allowed her inside the school building to obtain her education. She, in that time, did not harm any of her teachers, any of her peers. Medically, think about that for a minute. What does that tell you? What changed? I'll tell you what changed. Sachem hired, in my opinion, a new agenda-driven, money-motivated medical doctor. And the student we speak of transitioned to middle school and obtained a new, unethical, and ill-informed principal. Certainly, the child's own medical circumstances didn't change, only the opinions of two. Opinions over the possible death or severe medical harm of a child is by no means a close comparison. Sachem will, however, protect a child with a peanut allergy by not forcing him or her to have peanut butter while in school, and even going so far as to tell other students not to eat that peanut butter near them. Makes no sense to me whatsoever. When parents stand idly by and just let their educational system trample over their parental rights and the children's doctor's orders, we end up with no rights at all over our children. We are smarter than that. We will continue to fight against this medical tyranny, and I urge all listeners tonight to please call, email, visit your representatives to support bill number S7168, the doctor's orders bills. Thank you very much. And
Thank you, Ms. Kelton.
we briefly spoke about
Ms. Kelton, if you could just speak into the microphone, this way people at home can
we
hear you.
briefly spoke about mental issues with our youngsters. Look at this picture. This is what the young lady drew. Looks like a prison. She's standing outside of school, locked out. If this doesn't scream mental issues, I don't know what does. And Sachem, what about your culture of care? That should be across the board for everybody. Thank you.
Okay, Lori Phelan?
Good evening. As many of you already know, our child's longstanding medical exemption was wrongfully denied. This was a medical exemption put in place years ago following a severe vaccine injury she suffered at age 4. This reaction caused a sudden onset of autoimmune encephalitis, which caused debilitating neuropsychiatric symptoms. This was not an isolated incident. It became a chronic condition that robbed her of much of her childhood. Her frequent flare-ups and suffering prompted me to file a federal case for vaccine injury compensation, which is still pending at this time. Just last summer, I testified against federal officials to demonstrate how badly she was injured by these vaccines. I share this with you so everyone understands how necessary it was and still is for me to stand my ground on this matter. Our daughter had not one, not two, but 3 treating physicians write her medical exemptions and clearly state it would likely cause her detrimental harm due to her diagnosis of AE and previous vaccine injury. A district doctor and principal should never have the ability to override a child specialist of 8 years. Throughout the process, I also tried to convey how this risk would adversely affect her educationally. Even during her mild flare-ups, we saw cognitive decline, specifically with memory issues and processing speed. She would sometimes come home from school during these episodes feeling upset and frustrated, saying, "Mommy, my brain just felt broken today." I, as her mother, have done everything to prevent these flare-ups, and managing this condition has been a full-time job in itself at times. Anything that triggers an immune response is a serious threat to my child. When her medical exemption was denied, I was forced to choose between my child's health and her education. No parent should ever be in such a predicament. I was forced to watch her suffer the effects of isolation while fighting back on her medical and educational rights. The mental anguish and emotional suffering that she endured from her exclusion is incomprehensible. I have come up with 2 resolutions for this matter. First, we would need to remove this district doctor and not allow his contract to be renewed. In July. He is not properly qualified to do this job and has clearly violated the Hippocratic Oath by suggesting I endanger her welfare. I am hoping Sachem seeks out a doctor that fully respects the medical opinion of the child's treating physician and can recognize that they are the medical expert on that child. Secondly, State Senator Monica Martinez has sponsored a bill, S7168, that protects the medical exemption from vaccine mandates by restoring the clear intention of the letter of the law. The medical judgment of a child's physician should prevail, and his or her decision may not be overridden by school or public health authorities. Obtaining a medical exemption has been difficult for families, and they are often forced to choose between needlessly endangering their child or losing the child's right to attend school and receive a proper education. This bill would take school administrators and the New York State and New York City Departments of Health out of the decision-making process and places under the full control of the attending physician, which is exactly what the letter of the law requires. S7168 would put an end to the strong-arm tactics of the State Department of Health, whose main goal is to maximize vaccine uptakes, regardless of the consequence for the health of those forced to receive these shots. New York Public Health Law Section 2164 is explicit. If any physician licensed to practice medicine in this state certifies that such immunizations may be detrimental to a child, the requirements of this section shall be inapplicable until such immunization is found no longer to be detrimental to the child's health. The Department of Health bullies doctors in schools with threats of investigations and loss of medical license into not writing or accepting legitimate medical exemptions. Schools frequently reject the attending physician's opinion and defer to consultant physicians hired by the district who never even met or examined the child under review. The child's physician has a legal and moral obligation to put the best interest of the child first. The school district's physician has no obligation, usually defers to supporting policies to maximize vaccine uptake, avoid hassles with the Department of Health, regardless of the potential risks to the child under review. This bill will restore a measure of sanity to New York's insane vaccine policy and puts the health of the child first. It does not create a policy based on informed consent, which is the only acceptable policy in any country that claims to be a democracy that respects individual rights. But it's an important step in the right direction and will help get thousands of medically fragile children back in school. I'm asking for everyone to take action now and contact their local officials to support this necessary legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dillon. Okay. Ms. Flory, any other visitors? Okay. Item 5 is business items. We have a consent agenda A through F. Any motion, please? Ms. Isernia? Get a second? All right. Ms. Pickwitz? Ms. Isernia?
Hey, Mr. Scav, if I could, I'd like to make a motion. Hopefully I get a second that we amend consent agenda item 5 to remove items E and F so we can vote on those individually.
Okay. I need a second. All right. Alex Grillo, you all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. So the amended resolution is consent agenda A through F with the exception of E and F. So it's A through D. All right. The motion? I have a motion. Right? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Item E is real property tax exemption for persons with disability and limited income. Okay, I need a motion. Okay, 70 seconds, Sabrina. Questions or discussions? Comments? And all in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
All right, unanimous. Opposed? All right, item F. Okay, real property tax exemption for persons age 65 and over with limited income. I need a motion, please. Mr. Reynolds, second. Okay. Ms. Isernia, questions or discussions, comments? All in favor? Opposed? All right. All right. Motion fails unanimously. All right. So what that means is we're going to revert back to, well, not, we never changed, but we're going to stay exactly the way it's been running for several years now, where the burden would be spread over many, many households at a low increase. That's
Using data next year, how do we make a note of that? Is that in future agenda items for next year?
we could
Like,
add-
how do we remember to revisit this so that we can see if the data?
we'll
you know,
have
helps or hurts?
Michelle put it in her calendar.
All right, thanks. Sorry, a year ahead. Yeesh.
Okay. Okay, we have item 6. Okay, we have a personnel consent agenda A through O. I need a motion, please. And Ms. Reynolds, second by Mr. Baumann. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
I'm going to abstain.
One
It's-
abstention?
Yeah, there's just something on here that I want to abstain from.
Okay. Any recognitions? No. Item 7, we have a personnel consent agenda A through H for support staff. Any motion, please? Okay, Mike Cerny, second. Okay, Vinnie Reynolds. Questions or discussions? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
Mr. Scavo?
Yep.
We could just recognize that on tonight's agenda, the board has approved the retirement of our transportation supervisor, Mr. Savone. He's been working with the district through 2018, and we wish him all the best in his retirement.
Yeah, if I could- go ahead, Rob.
No, okay. I was just going to clap.
Mr. Savone, I want to thank him personally. Since the moment I met Joe, every meeting we ever had, he at the end, he kind of would shake his finger at me and say, and he would say it every time, God forbid we have any kid get hurt. We can't have a kid get hurt in terms of our buses. So I always remember that. That always stuck with me, that he was very much in favor of making sure we protect our kids and get them where they needed to get to in a safe and safe manner. So I just want to thank Joe for that and his time with us. Thank you very much, Mr. Savone.
And on behalf of the Board of Education, we certainly wish him well in his retirement. Certainly we'll miss him, and hopefully he doesn't go far and stay in touch with him. So, thank you.
Now you can applaud.
Thank you. Okay. Item 8 is contracts. We have a consent agenda A through H. Any motion, please? Mr. Isernia, second. Mr. Baumann. Questions or discussions? All right, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. All right, item 9 deals with budget, vote, and election. All right, it's the approval of election workers. Any motion, please? Mr. Reynolds, second by Ms. Volpe, Stephanie Volpe. Questions or discussions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 10 is donations from Hiawatha Elementary School PTA. Any motion, please? Ms. Isernia, second by Ms. Pikowitz. Any questions or discussions? All right, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Item 11, Committee on Special Education. We have a consent agenda A through B. Motion, Ms. Baumann, second. Alex Pickett. Alex. I gotta say, all right. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Item 12, monthly reports. Any updates from the board? Stephanie Volpe?
Tomorrow is our legislative forum here at 7:30 in this room. So that's our biggest update.
Okay. All right, and certainly it's open to the community to come. It's also going to
Absolutely.
be streamed.
It's going to be streamed, and Dana is coming to set up. We still have RSVPs coming in.
Okay.
So
Legislators.
I'm trying to think. I think it was 7,
Okay.
6 or 7. I don't have the list in front of me, but there were a few that were last minute. So
And obviously there's legislators that have an impact on
everything,
a state
everything
budget.
we've discussed this
Yeah.
evening. So I would suggest, if the community wants to be heard, to either come or watch it live streamed.
Okay. And any other updates from any other committees? I know the Diversity and Curriculum Council was rescheduled.
Yes, it'll meet on April 3rd and then again on
And
May.
it's going to be
May 8th.
combined committee.
Yes.
Okay.
And just another, for all the people who came out to support tonight, it would be greatly appreciated if you come again. I know it's hard to go out 2 nights in a row, but everybody, our friends will be here, our politicians will be here, and it's a nice evening for you to have some FaceTime with them. So I do hope that we get a nice full room for tomorrow evening as well.
Okay. Sure.
And
Sabrina?
Stephanie, can we just, what's the forum going to be like? Like, what's the logistics of it?
As it is, the previous forum was COVID affected, but this one, people can come, they can fill out a note card, similar to how our board meeting works. It's almost identical. They give a note card in, the note cards are tallied, and then the questions are asked of the electeds to give their opinion on the certain topic. If 2 note cards come in or 3 of the same subject, they paraphrase it together. But it's really an opportunity, especially if people want to hang around a little bit afterwards. They do get one-to-one FaceTime with our electeds. So it's pretty pretty awesome, especially in such a small room. Usually you have to go to Albany for stuff like this, especially if you want to meet with Doug. Well, if you want to meet with more people than Doug, because Doug's pretty accessible.
Yeah, we had our first meeting. We reconvened the Budget Advisory Committee, so we're in the process now. Once we get a presentation to the board, we meet the next night and do a deeper dive. We're probably going to postpone tomorrow nights because of the legislative forum, and we'll just double up next time. So, but it's again good. We have a very inquisitive group, and they're diving in, and they'll ask some hard questions. So, okay.
Nothing at this time, Mr. Scavo.
Okay. Item 15, board discussion items, was the budget. We did that early on. Okay, item 16, future items, agenda items discussion. Stephanie?
You noticed something in our weekly highlight that the eclipse is coming, and we're not in the line of totality. Is that what it's? But we are 99%, I believe. So we could still have people staring at the sun with injuries. So are we ordering glasses, or are we doing some kind of fun activity that day to say, don't look at the sun?
I got to tell you, I'm starting to get a little nervous about that day.
Yeah.
And it's April 8th. And it's exactly in the time period when kids would be going out to buses and things like that. And at first, Mrs. Hines came to me and said, I can get, 12,000 glasses, we'll try to. And I was like, oh my gosh, we'll make something great out of this. And then I thought about it. What if one kid who we're, sending out to the bus or doesn't have their glass on at that right moment? So I got to tell you, a lot of districts are starting to talk about using snow days that day, or half-day professional development that day, or just a regular half day. So I'm actually going to a presentation, some Sagamore students as part of their civil.
We don't obviously have an eclipse day built into our calendar.
No, we don't have an eclipse day. We do have a snow day built in. So we could potentially still use that day and not lose a day of vacation or anything like that. But certainly there's a concern around it.
All right. Okay.
Especially for the littles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other future discussion items?
Hey, Rob, just one comment. So we're coming into both the
Guys,
high.
can we just quiet down so we can just get this through?
So again, just going into the spring plays at the high school and middle school. So if you can get out there and support the students, we've got 2 good shows, East and North, and then all 3 middle schools have some fantastic shows.
Yeah, all
So
come up in March.
Go out and support the kids. They do a phenomenal job with our theater program. So, okay.
Okay, anything else? I just have one that I just want to add. It was brought to my attention through a phone call. Unbeknownst to me, I wasn't aware of this, but a community member had called me and said that, there's direction that's given to the middle schools about elimination of honors English and social studies for next year. And, there's concern that, instead of challenging students more, okay, 7th and 8th grade honors in English. I want to put, if that was the direction of the administration, I want to put a hold on it until the board can weigh in and have a discussion as to the impact and why would we even consider doing something like that. So I'd like to put this on because I know that schedules have to be done relatively soon for our next meeting, so we could have that discussion. If the board could be provided with rationale as to why we would do something like that, and what can we do to restore that, so we're challenging kids to the next level and preparing them for the high school AP, the rigors of AP, and challenges of those classes. So if everybody's okay with that, I'd like to add that as a discussion item.
Yeah, without a doubt, Mr. Scavo, that was brought to our attention that there was a concern or feedback around 7th grade, in particular ELA and social studies. There hasn't been a science in 7th grade. There is one in 8th grade. It seems that we've done different things in different places over the years, and that's one of the things that we've tried to clean up of late, is trying to get us across the same page in all the schools. So certainly we can have that conversation. That is something the board should weigh in on, and we'd get that feedback back to our schools, make sure we're all on the same page.
Any other future discussion items besides budget? It's going to be on there. All right. Our next meeting is scheduled for March 13th, 2024. At this particular time, I need a motion to go into exec session to discuss an investigation, compliance investigation made known to the board, a student appeal to attend an arts school in Nassau-Boces, disclosure forms for Union Avenue, security polls, personnel involving a member made known to the board, And that's pretty much it. Any motion to go into exec session to discuss this item? Stephanie, second by Alex. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.